What defines a soul? For over 7 decades, the answer from Zuffenhausen was written in gasoline and scored for a mechanical orchestra. The soul of a Porsche was a tangible thing, a roar behind your head, a vibration through the steering wheel, a symphony of combustion that was felt just as deeply as it was heard. It was an identity forged on the racetrack and perfected on the open road, a legacy measured in decibels and RPMs. This is the Porsche Taycan. On a spreadsheet, it's a collection of breathtaking numbers. Staggering acceleration, revolutionary 800-volt charging, a triumph of efficiency. It's easy to dismiss it as just another high-performance EV, another headline in the electric revolution. But that would be a profound mistake, because the story of the Taycan isn't about kilowatts or battery cells. This is a story about inheritance. It's about one of the most revered names in engineering history, staring into a silent, electric future and asking the most terrifying, ambitious question imaginable. Who are we now? Can the essence of driving pleasure, that visceral emotional connection that defines this brand, be translated? Can it be digitized? Or does something fundamental get lost in the translation from analog soul to digital heartbeat? We're not just here to review another car. We're here to investigate a legacy, to see if the heart of a Porsche still beats when its famous voice has gone quiet. This is the search for the soul of the electric age. Porsche's legacy and the EV gamble. To understand the Taycan, you first have to understand the weight of the name it bears. For generations, Porsche didn't just build cars, they built emotions on 4 wheels. That emotion had a very specific sound. The air-cooled flat-6 wail of a 911, the thunderous roar of a 928 V8. It was a sound that spoke of precision, of power, of a certain kind of mechanical purity. It was a religion, and the engine note was its hymn. This legacy wasn't just about noise, it was about feeling. The vibration through a leather-wrapped steering wheel, the mechanical feedback from the gear shift, the way the car seemed to communicate with the driver through every single component. This was the contract Porsche had with its drivers, a promise of total, immersive connection. A promise written not in code, but in steel and oil. Then, the world began to change. A quiet revolution started in California, not Germany. Whispers of a future without tailpipes began to grow louder. For a company like Porsche, built on a foundation of internal combustion, this wasn't just a shift in technology, it was an existential threat. The very heart of what they sold was being questioned. Imagine the boardroom debates, the anxiety. Do we cling to the past? Do we try to ignore this electric tide? Or do we dive headfirst into the unknown and bet everything on our ability to reinvent our own soul? This was the gamble. The Taycan wasn't just another new model. It was the single biggest risk in Porsche's history. It was a declaration that they would not be left behind, that they would not become a museum piece. They would meet the future head-on, but they would do it on their own terms. The mission was audacious, almost unthinkable, to build an electric vehicle that didn't just carry the Porsche badge, but that earned it. A car that would make a purist forget about the missing engine. A car that had to be more than just fast in a straight line. It had to handle, it had to breathe, it had to feel like a Porsche. Anything less would be a betrayal of everything they'd built since 1948. They weren't just building a car to compete with Tesla, they were building a car to convince their most loyal believers. They had to prove that the soul of Porsche wasn't locked in a cylinder block, that it could live in a battery pack. The connection, the magic, the sheer joy of driving could be silent. This is the immense pressure that shaped the Taycan. Every line on its body, every line of code in its systems was drawn under the weight of history. This is the story of a company betting its legacy on a whisper. The question was no longer about how to build an electric car. It was far more difficult. How do you build an electric Porsche? The birth of the Taycan. To understand the machine that sits before us, we must first travel back to a moment of profound uncertainty. The year is 2015, the Frankfurt Motor Show. The air is thick with the familiar scent of gasoline and ambition, but in the middle of the Porsche stand, something is different, something silent, something from the future. This was the Mission E. Not a car, but a promise, a concept, a line drawn in the sand. For the first time, Porsche, the guardian of the internal combustion engine, showed the world a vision of itself that was fully electric. The reaction was a seismic shockwave through the industry. Purists trembled. Enthusiasts debated late into the night. Was this a mere marketing exercise, a flight of fancy, or was it a genuine glimpse of a coming reality? Behind the scenes, the promise of the Mission E had already ignited a fire within Porsche's engineers. The question from management was not if they could build it, but how they would build it to be unmistakably, undeniably a Porsche. This was not a project, it was a crusade. The goal was not to create the electric car with the longest range or the most minimalist interior. The goal was to create the electric car that handled better than anything else on the road. The one that could lap a track without losing performance. The one that felt, above all else, alive. The challenges were monstrous. Electric cars of the era were defined by compromise. They were heavy, their performance faded as the battery depleted, and they charged at a snail's pace. Porsche engineers looked at these problems not as obstacles, but as equations to be solved with German obsession. The first and most revolutionary answer was the 800-volt architecture. While other manufacturers were working with 400-volt systems, Porsche's team decided to double it. Think of it like water through a hose. To move more water, you can use a wider hose, or you can increase the pressure. Everyone else was designing a wider hose. Porsche decided to invent a whole new kind of pressure. This wasn't just an incremental step, it was a monumental leap. It meant they could use lighter, thinner wiring throughout the entire car, saving crucial kilograms. More importantly, it meant the Taycan could accept charges so blisteringly fast that it could add hundreds of miles of range in the time it takes to drink a coffee. It was a technical marvel that immediately redefined the entire EV landscape. But speed and range were only half the battle. The soul of a Porsche lives in the corners. How do you make 2.5 tons of battery and metal feel nimble, responsive, and joyful? The answer was a symphony of engineering. They gave it the widest tires ever fitted to a production Porsche, creating immense grip. They developed a rear axle with 2 gears, a short first gear for explosive launches off the line, and a long second gear for efficient, high-speed cruising. This was a first, a solution born from a refusal to compromise on either thrill or efficiency. Then came the suspension. A sophisticated air suspension system was standard, but the true magic was optional. Porsche's 48-volt electronic anti-roll system. This technology actively fights body roll in corners, making this massive sedan feel like a go-kart, flat and planted. It can read the road ahead and adjust in milliseconds. It's witchcraft, plain and simple, and it exists for one reason only: to make you smile. Every decision, every innovation was filtered through a single, relentless question. Does it feel like a Porsche? The weight of the company's legacy was on the shoulders of these engineers. They weren't just building a car. They were translators, tasked with taking a 70-year-old language of tactile, analog emotion and rewriting it into a digital code. When the first production Taycan finally rolled out of the factory, it was more than a new model. It was the culmination of a billion-euro gamble. It was the answer to a question the entire automotive world was asking. It was Porsche staring into the electric abyss and not blinking. They had built their future. Now, the world had to decide if it was still a Porsche. Performance breakdown. So, they had done it. They had built the machine. They had poured every ounce of their legacy into its design. But a Porsche is not defined by its spec sheet or its factory. It is defined by the road, by the connection between human and machine. All the theory, all the innovation meant nothing if it didn't translate into that singular, magical feeling behind the wheel. This is where the Taycan had to prove itself. Not in a boardroom, but here, on asphalt. Slip inside, and the first connection is immediate. You don't climb into a Taycan, you buckle yourself into it. The seating position is low, impossibly low for a sedan, your hips nestled just inches above the pavement. It's a feeling reserved for mid-engine supercars, and it immediately tells you this is different. The world outside isn't just observed, it's experienced. The windshield wraps around you, the dashboard arches like the cockpit of a single-seater racer. Every control is angled toward the driver. This isn't a lounge, it's a command center. This is where the engineering magic truly comes to life. Find a corner and the Taycan transforms. The steering is a masterpiece of calibration. It's not overly light, not artificially heavy. It's just precise. It feeds back just enough information, the texture of the tarmac, the grip level of the front tires without ever becoming nervous or harsh. You turn the wheel and the car changes direction with an eagerness that defies its 2.5-ton weight. This is the work of that 48-volt anti-roll system, the massive tires, the perfectly balanced chassis. The body remains flat, composed, utterly unfazed. Then you get back on the power, and this is the second miracle. In most powerful cars, you wait for the gearbox to find a ratio, for the engine to climb into its power band. In the Taycan, the power is just there, instantly, and it keeps coming. The 2-speed gearbox on the rear axle does its work seamlessly. A faint, almost imperceptible shift felt more as a surge in acceleration than a physical jerk. It pulls and pulls, the horizon rushing toward you with a silent, relentless force that never seems to diminish. But the ultimate test of any performance car is not how it behaves at its limit, but how it makes you feel within yours. Push too hard, ask too much of the grip, and the Taycan doesn't bite, it communicates. The all-wheel drive system shuffles power front to rear with genius-level intelligence. In the wet, it feels unshakable, planting itself to the road. It's a car that flatters the expert driver but, more importantly, protects and rewards the enthusiastic novice. It makes you feel like a better driver than you are. This is the true Porsche magic, and they have translated it perfectly. This isn't just performance. This is accessible and utterly exploitable performance. It's a performance that isn't shouted. It's whispered directly into your nervous system. The symphony hasn't ended. The instruments have simply changed. The orchestra is now playing a composition of pure physics, and it is every bit as thrilling as the classic rock anthem that came before it. The shocking factor. Alright, so we've talked about the performance. The numbers, the grip, the feel, it's all textbook Porsche. But honestly, that was almost the easy part for them. The handling, the braking that's in their DNA. It's what we expected. But then you start living with this thing. You start noticing the details, the little things, and that's where the real shock sets in. Because this car, this electric Porsche, it starts doing things no 911 could ever do. It starts to get spooky. Let's talk about the launch. Forget the 0 to 60 time for a second. I'm talking about the sensation. You plant your foot in a Turbo S, and for a split second, the world just stops. There's no drama, no wheel spin, no screaming engine building to a crescendo. It just goes. It's this silent, violent shove that pins you to the seat and warps the scenery. It's less like driving and more like being shot out of a cannon. It's physically unnerving the first time you experience it. It feels like cheating physics. And then there's the consistency. Any other performance car, any other one has a best before date. You do a few hard launches, you take it on a track for a few hot laps, and it starts to complain. The brakes fade, the power drops, the gearbox gets sluggish to protect itself. It's normal. It's mechanical. If you felt that connection watching this, if you felt that spark of understanding what makes this car so special, then do us a huge favor. Hit that like button. It genuinely helps us out more than you know. If you're not already part of the community, subscribe and ring that bell so you don't miss what's coming next. We want to hear from you. Was Porsche right to bet everything on electric? Could you see yourself in a Taycan?